we see now as a trend from studies all over the world is that species from small to large will try to go to higher areas because it's warming where they are living currently.
It is a fact that the ecosystem that we have right now are not going to be the same in 50 years or even in 20 years. A lot of the species are going to be able to adapt to those changes, but not all the species. A lot of species are going to need to move in order to survive. And the ability of those species to move is going to be limited by the type of ecosystem that they need to go through.
If you want a species to survive, if you want a whole species to survive, you need to make sure they have enough habitat that they can use to move across. But we need to act in order to provide that connectivity, in order to provide the species the ability to move, the ability for species to change their homes, because if not, they're not going to survive.
The Osa Peninsula is in the southwest corner of Costa Rica, and it's like a super diverse area. The junction of the Pacific Ocean and the tropical rainforest is like a fierce nature living together.
Osa es quizás uno de los últimos rincones de Costa Rica que todavía se mantiene muy entero y poco alterado. Quizás el lugar diría sin miedo a que tiene más biodiversidad del país.
It's a very special place on Earth. The number of species, the level of endemicity, but we have a lot of challenges. So the Osa Peninsula, whoever comes here, you can see jaguars, if you're lucky. You can see dantas, you can see tapirs, you can see spider monkeys, a very endangered primate. But it's an area that is completely isolated. The species cannot move from the Osa Peninsula to adapt to the context of climate change.
When you fly over the Osa Peninsula, you are going to find all these tropical rainforests. So that area is really well protected. But then if we move from the Osa Peninsula up to the Talamanca mountain range, the situation is different. There is definitely a big problem with connectivity.
You can just go on Google Earth, and then you see these green, really dark green dots in the middle of a lighter green, which are pastures. And here is so evident. If you look at La Amistad International Park, it's like a straight line of dark green and light green. That's so obvious. You don't even need to go to the site. When you're driving around here, you feel there is a lot of forest. But when you look it from the sky, that you can see it's just small patches of forest.
Most of that area is pasture land, agricultural land that doesn't have a lot of forest cover. So that's a really important barrier for a lot of the species.
In nature, forests are like a continuous mass. So that allows animals to just move over. Animals that are adapted to forest.
So we are working to connect all the small patches of forest, the fragment of forest that we have right now. Trying to close the gap between the Osa Peninsula and the foothills of the Talamanca.
What we envision is to offer a model that demonstrates how you can build climate connectivity in a landscape which is very isolated right now, how you can connect it to a crucial part of Central America, which is La Amistad National Park, through climate corridors.
A climate corridor. Well, talk about connectivity, talk about solving forest fragmentation. That's it, a climate corridor.
When we talk about climate corridors, this is a slightly different concept to what people know as a biological corridor. A biological corridor is simply an area that connects two landscapes and allows a species population to move across. But when we talk about climate corridor, you have a corridor that connects areas on the lowlands and areas that are more in the highlands, protecting a whole altitudinal gradient, then we're talking about a climate corridor. The AmistOsa landscape is the perfect place to test this model of building climate change connectivity because it's a clear example of an altitudinal gradient.
In the specific area we're working at, we want to connect the ocean to the ridge. So go from 0 feet to about 9,000 feet. Throughout an agricultural landscape,
it is an ambitious project. This is a really ambitious project, but it's actually connecting one of the most biodiverse sites in Costa Rica with the central part of Costa Rica.
Entonces estamos instalando puentes arbóreos para animales que viven en la copa de los árboles. Entonces ellos pueden cruzar y no hace falta que bajen y se pongan en peligro cruzando la carretera.
So what we're trying to do with this ambitions plan is find the best areas within this wide region, because it's a colossal region, to really see what kind of paths do wildlife use now. So then we can really pinpoint what are the areas we should try to maybe restore, protect further. Really say, okay, on the map, these and these areas are really of the highest value for wildlife.
What we know right now is that the Osa Peninsula and all the biodiversity that we have right now in here is not going to survive if we don't make that connectivity. That's a really big challenge because a lot of that area is already used by humans, and of course that people needs to have a way to survive, right?
we have built what we call the AmistOsa restoration model, which tries to harmonize local development with protecting and enhancing biodiversity. We don't see it in our project as just planting trees.
It's not just about planting trees. It's not just about installing arboreal bridges of a wildlife overpass. It's way more than that, and it's making the model sustainable in the long term.
I think that having local people involved in any conservation effort is really important. And focus especially in this particular area when we have a lot of people living in there, it is crucial that we have them involved.
Esto era potreros. Queríamos producir café, pero de una manera sostenible y amigable con el medio ambiente. Este lugar significa para mí y mi familia, es un todo.
Somos productores de café, somos productores de cacao, tenemos aguacate, hortalizas, pero no solo me interesa el café o los aguacates o la semilla de cacao, me interesa el suelo, me interesa el agua que uso, que haya para mí hoy y que haya para más adelante.
In today's world, it's impossible to think, okay, let's buy all this land and protect it. And that's not right on social terms, because there are people who live here, their family, their tradition is here. And from my point of view, that's part of the environment. It's not outside the environment. It's how do you harmonize that with biodiversity, with nature?
Así que es toda una estrategia y un gran reto para poder lograr conectar otra vez todo, porque hay que volver a pasar por fincas, por pueblos, y no es imposible, solamente hace falta la voluntad de las comunidades y el trabajo en conjunto para volver a lograr. Se puede lograr, pero tienen que involucrarse todas las comunidades.
Some people feel that doing a corridor or preserving biodiversity can compromise economic development, and I see it's totally the opposite. Our goal is to create a corridor that has biodiversity and has a good standard of living for the people, and that can happen. We want to show that that can be done.
Al hacer las cosas planificadas, vamos a tener buenos resultados. El café, los granos son más grandes porque tenemos una mejor polinización. Las frutas, ustedes lo pueden ver, son de alta calidad. Yo puedo cultivar árboles frutales y a la vez me sirven de corredor biológico y a la vez le doy de comer a muchas aves y tengo para yo vivir también.
Bosque saludable significa muchas cosas. Significa oxígeno limpio, significa turismo. Entonces, entre más bosques, pues eso garantiza también más ingresos a las comunidades. La gente misma se dio cuenta que sin animales no va a ser lo mismo ir a visitar un lugar, a un parque, a un bosque. Un bosque sin animales no tiene sentido.
This is a very ambitious plan and this is not easy. But what it really motivates me and motivates us as an organization is that there is a real hope, there is a real possibility to give people hope, because we have been working on this landscape for over 15 years and we're seeing changes. We're seeing changes at the landscape level, we're seeing changes at the people's level.
Y necesitamos avanzar como seres humanos, pero avanzar de una manera responsable.
Yo creo que más que beneficiar al que hoy está tomando la decisión y restaurando, beneficia hacia el futuro.
For example, we're going to fence that. That won't be pasture anymore. The idea is to be a forest. Then down there, where you see that big drop, we're going to fence that as well. And that will be planted with trees. The idea is that cattle will be rotated from one area to the other and let the pasture grow. In 2 years, you will see a big difference in this farm. The beauty of the tropics is that processes are fast. And we are starting to see change even on Google Earth. That makes us so proud when we start designing a farm and then we look, wow, look, we planted this and now it's showing on a satellite.
Así es como se hace. Y así es como se avanza, porque cuando este proyecto de Orsa Conservación comenzó y hoy por hoy vemos los resultados.
Just conserving spaces and species, it's not enough, because we're not living in a standstill moment, right? The world is changing, so we need to be adapting to that.
Dicen que nunca es tarde para comenzar un proceso y para recuperar lo que se ha perdido. Hoy es el tiempo perfecto para arrancar una iniciativa tan importante como es conectar OSA con el Parque La Amistad.
This model can be implemented in many other regions across the world, particularly in the tropics, rebuilding connectivity, climate connectivity between areas of great wilderness. And this should be at the center of a global agenda for biodiversity and climate change. We need to be bold enough to make the right decisions at the right moment. And we have the science, and we are demonstrating that it's possible here in AmistOsa. So it's possible somewhere else.